Okay, hello and welcome to MSDynamicsWorld.com's Fall 2014 Financial Automation Webcast Series. I'm Jason Gumpert, and I am joined today by a first-time speaker for us, but someone who many of you may already know, and that is Jody Christensen of Microsoft. Jody is a program manager for Dynamics GP, and we're really glad to have her joining us today to talk about the new and improved Dynamics GP document attach capabilities. We invite you to add your feedback and ask Jody questions today. She'll be taking time to answer questions at a few points during the session today. You can use the chat block or the Q&A block that you'll see to the right of the slides in the session here to ask your questions. So without further delay, I am happy to welcome Jody Christensen. Jody.
Good morning. Thanks, Jason. I'm happy to be here as a first-time presenter for Microsoft. Again, my name is Jody Christensen. I'm a program manager here at Microsoft, and I've been working with Dynamics GP for quite a long time, about 15 years. So I do have a lot of history with Dynamics GP. Today we're going to dive into document attachment. It's a feature that we added back in GP 2013, and there was a couple of different times we added to it throughout GP 2013. So I just want to give you the full picture of the document attachment feature and all of the capabilities that surround it. So we'll get started. So the things that I want to cover for our session today are a few of the basic things like setup for the document attachment, and then we'll talk about the records where we can add document attachment records, so the master records and the transactions that we can use and put attachment on those documents. I'll also talk about the emailing capabilities, because the attachments that you put on the documents can be emailed as well. So I'll talk about that and show you how that can be done. Then we also added a new feature in 2013 R2 for scanning and attaching. So directly in a transaction, if you're scanning, you can attach it directly to a master record or a transaction itself. And then also the OLE Notes. We redid how we were doing the OLE Notes because with document attachment, you have the ability to replace those OLE Notes with a document attachment feature that we've added in. So all of the different notes that we have throughout Microsoft Dynamics GP, we can now use a document attachment instead of the OLE Notes. And I'll talk about how we can do some converting of those notes and a utility that will help us do that. I will be doing some demo throughout the presentation today. So stay tuned for that. So I'll go into Dynamics GP and show you the document attachment information as well as a few slides. So we'll continue. So I just first wanted to go through the master record information and the transactions that we can use for the document attachment feature. As far as the master records, we can add an attachment to a customer card, the vendor card, or an item. So in those three places, we have the ability to go in and add the attachments. There's multiple attachments that we can add in all three of those places. And then on the transaction side, in sales order processing, we can use the sales transaction entry window and put an attachment on orders and invoices and the different options that we have in that sales transaction entry window. We also have the purchase order information where we can add attachments. So in PO entry, the receipts and invoice windows, as well as the return window for purchasing. And in those two areas for sales order and purchase order, we can do the attachments both at the header level, but also at the line level. So each item that we have on those transactions can have their own attachments as well. And then we did add payables transaction entry recently. So in the AP invoice window, if you need to add an attachment to a record, you can do that in the payables transaction entry window as well. So those are the areas where we have the doc attach feature as far as at the transactions level inside Dynamics GP. Okay, so as far as the OLE Notes, what we've done with the OLE Notes, we've really replaced them with the document attachments. And one of the reasons that we did that is because with the OLE Notes, they weren't available to use on the web client. So any of our customers that were using web client, they didn't have the ability to use those OLE Notes. And now with document attachment, they can use the doc attach feature instead of the OLE Notes. So if you look at that screenshot over on the right-hand side where it says Note, that's the note window that we've seen throughout Dynamics GP, where we can add different notes to different things as far as a customer. We can add it to a transaction, to any document. But what we've changed is the attachment down at the bottom. So the little paperclip icon, instead of bringing up the OLE container, it'll now bring up the document attachment window inside these notes. So we've had the ability to, add, the OLE notes before, but now with the document attachment, and this was added in GP 2013 R2, now you have the ability to use that attachment, and then the document attachment management window is the window that will open instead of the OLE note container. Now, there is a utility that I'll talk about here a little bit later about how to migrate your OLE notes and what we can do with that. But we also have the ability, if you were using the OLE notes before, you still have the ability to use those and see those in your notes. What happens then is there's a drop down where that little icon is for the note attachment, and it'll give you the option to use the OLE note container or the document attach. So you do have the choice to use that going forward. So I will talk about that utility here in just a little bit as well. Okay, so I'm going to go into Dynamics GP and show you some of the setup options and how we can use the document attach features, and then I'll come back and do some more slides here in just a few minutes. Before I go into that demo, if there's any questions, go ahead and put them in that Q&A question and answer panel, and I'll try to get to those. Or while I'm doing the demo, if you think of something, go ahead and put those in, and I can come back to those after the demo as well. I'm going to share out my desktop. Okay, so I have my desktop shared. And what we're going to do is go into the document attachment setup window first. I'm going to go ahead and click on the document attachment setup. So once you get to Dynamics GP 2013 and the document attachment feature that is available, it is not turned on by default. So you do have to go into the setup window and mark the checkbox to allow document attachments. That's what turns on the document attachment feature. The next option there is the default location. So if you're a company that does the uploading of documents to a central location, either on a server or a location on your desktop, something like that, you can use this default location. So then anytime you want to go to do the attachments, it will default to that location. So that's what the default location is for. So if you scan in or if you receive in a bunch of files and then you use that location to attach to the different records inside of Dynamics GP, that's what the default location would be for. And you'll see that option below that as well, the delete file from default location after attachment. Now, one of the things that you can do once you do that attachment, say you got an invoice from a vendor, you enter the invoice inside of Dynamics GP, and you do the attachment inside that transaction entry window. You could delete that transaction from where you have it on your server type thing, because inherently the document attachment feature does work different. It actually stores the document in the SQL Server database. It's called a blob, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. But it stores the actual document with SQL Server, so it's not storing a link to the document, and that's typically how the OLE Notes work. Is it stored a link to the documents, where they were stored on your server or a workstation or something like that. So that's why we have this option, so you can delete those files from where they were scanned, because they now are saved in the SQL Server instead of in a different location. So that's what that checkbox means. There is a maximum file size that you can set. This is the maximum that you see here on the screen. And then below that, we have some defaults. So as we set up the document attachment feature, there's some defaults that we can set up within the system that will flow down to the different records and that type of thing. So you can allow the attachments to be deleted with a checkbox. If you don't want people deleting any attachments, of course you can unmark that, but there's also a password that you can put on there. If someone does want to delete something, they have to enter the password. And then below that, we have our allowing the attachments to flow from master records to documents. So really what this means is that if you enter an attachment on an item, so say you put an image, a picture of that item on the item card, or you put, item specifications on that item card. Do you want that record to flow, or that image to flow down to transactions? So I have a picture of the item on my item card. I'm entering a sales transactions entry, for an order or an invoice, do you want that transaction to have that attachment automatically? And it can, and that's what the flow means. So you can have those records automatically flow down. Now this is just the default. You can change this on the attachments that you add in the master record, and I'll show you that here in just a few minutes. So these are the defaults if you want it to flow or not, but you can do that for each attachment. You can change that information. And then the last option there, the send attachments in email. That checkbox allows you to send these document attachment information along with other transactions, like sending out your sales invoice to your customer. If you want those document attachments to go along with it, we can send those in an email as well. Same thing with the purchase order. If you want to send an attachment to the vendor with that PO, we can send those attachments in email as well. Then finally on the right side, we have some default attributes that you can set up. So I've set up a couple of here. I have contract, picture, and then item specifications. And so what this does is anytime that you put an image or an attachment on, let's just say, my item, so I have picture, if you want to put a description of that picture, maybe it's either color or black and white, or if you want to do the file size, high resolution or low, if you want to describe what that attachment is in a little bit more detail, that's what the attribute defaults will give you, and I'll show you that here in just a few minutes and where you can see that information. Okay, so that's our setup window. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. All right, so let's go into an item. I'm going to add an attachment into my inventory item. So just go to my area page for inventory and click on item. And I have an item set up here. I have my printer. So this is the attachment icon. So once you enable that attachments in the setup window that we just looked at, this is the icon that will be available in the ribbon for the areas where we have the attachments available. So I'm going to click on attach. And then this is the document attachment management window that comes up. So this is where we can go in and attach different items to our item that we have here. So my A100 printer that I have selected in this window. I can go in and do the attachments right in this window. So down at the bottom, I click attach. And it's going out to that default location that I specified in my setup window. So I'm going to just find my printer. And it's just easy as that. It attaches that image right into my item card that I have here. So this is the file that I attached, laser printer. When you do that, there's a couple of things that it does automatically. So it does the time and date stamp that you can see here, the user that's logged in that did this. It does give you an origin, so we know this record type is item card. That's the IC. And there's a couple of checkboxes. So this is what's coming from setup. So the allow document flow. So once I have this on here, yes, it can flow down to my transactions. And then the next one is send attachments in email. Do I want to be able to email these? And by default, both of these are checked. Well, if I want to change those settings, there is an option to do that. So if I click on this blue expansion arrow here next to my line item, this brings up that attachment properties window. So here you can change the flow or not flow by each document that you have attached. And then here's those attributes. So for picture, maybe this is either color or a black and white picture. You could put in more of a description inside the attachment attribute, so you could describe what that attachment is. If other people are looking at this, they would be able to view that type of information here. And then, of course, down at the bottom, the send attachments in email. Since it's marked in my setup window, it does automatically get marked in my attachment properties. So, but you can certainly change that. If you don't want this one item or one record to not be emailed, you can change that in the setup as well. That's the attachment properties window. Once I have attached this, there is a preview option down here at the bottom. I can hit preview, and it will open up that picture for me so I can see what that is. If that comes up here. There we go. So it does open up my picture for me so I can see what that is. That's just my picture viewer. So there's a couple other things that we have on this window. So there's a checkbox over here. If you want to mark this as an image, you could do that. And there's also the product details. You can mark those checkboxes if you want to describe that, just so you know at a glance if this is the picture or if it's some product detailed information. You can see that information there. There's also the deleted tab. So if you do want to delete something, the icon over here is on the right-hand side to delete that. And then it will show up in the deleted window here, but it does keep it as a deleted item or deleted record out here. You can still preview it from the deleted if you needed to do that. So if your item specification documents, if they've been updated and you want to attach a new version, you could delete the old one, but it would stay here so you could still reference it if needed. And then the active tab, of course, would have your new item specifications if you've the updated version. So that would be one area where you could use that. But one other option that we have on this window is another expansion arrow next to the date here. This is the status inquiry window. This can be useful because when you come into this window, it tells you what's been done with this attachment. So I've attached it and then at 10:12, and then I viewed it at 10:14. So it lets me come in and view the information and see what's happened with this. I can see who's went in and viewed this information, so it does give me that same user ID and date and timestamp information. If I've done a delete, it would show up in this window. If I've edited something, we can see that type of information out here as well. So it does give me the information, right in the status inquiry window, what happens with that attachment that I've done. I can certainly attach more than one item. We would just click attach and then go through, and you can attach as many as you need to in this window. Again, what's happening when you do this attachment, it does store this out in SQL Server itself. So the actual attachment is stored out there. It's called a blob, which stands for binary large object. So it's stored differently. It's stored right in the database with you. So it's not like it's a link back to that folder where I attached it from. It doesn't do a link that way. It actually stores it out in SQL itself. You'll notice one other option or one other button down here at the bottom is scan. Right now it's not available because I don't have a scanner hooked up to my laptop. But if I did, the scan would be available. And I do have some at least screenshots for you to show you how that works. And we'll get to those here in just a few minutes. So I'll show you how the scanning can work as well when you're inside a document that you want to attach to. So those are the main the features that we have for that document attachment management window, so you can see that information. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. I am going to bring up one other item that I have attached. I have my Xbox One item. You'll see the icon does change to a piece of paper with a little paper clip on it. That's the item icon, or excuse me, the attachment icon when something has been attached to the window. But I'm going to go in here for just a minute. And you can see in here that I don't have my allow document flow on for my Xbox item. I just wanted to show you that, and we'll see how that works here in a transaction in just a minute. Okay, so I'm going to close my item maintenance window. And I'm going to go over to sales. And in the sales transaction entry window, I'm going to enter an invoice for my customer Aaron Fitz. I'm going to put my batch information in. So my first one was the A100. Okay, and then I'm going to do my Xbox One item as well. Okay, so I've got two items on here. And I'll first go back and look at this A100. So this is the one that I entered when we went into that item maintenance window. And you'll notice that the little icon is here, the attachment management icon, and it does show that there's something attached here already. So if I open up that window, we'll see that laser printer picture that I added, because that automatically flowed down. That's what this, allow attachment flow or allow document flow checkbox means, is it came from the item card because that is the origin, but it did flow down to my transaction like I wanted it to. So I can see that information there. If I click on my Xbox One item, the attachment icon is still the original, so it did not flow onto this transaction. But I could certainly go in here and do an attachment from this window if I wanted to. So just because you're not flowing, that's fine. I can still go in and do an attachment. I can choose my Xbox item and still attach it at that point. So either way, that will work. I just wanted to show you how it flows. And now you'll see that the origin here is sales invoice instead of the item card, the IC on the other one. So you can still see where it was attached and who attached it. Okay, so you'll also notice, these are the attachments for the line items. I still have an attachment up here at the top, so as a document level, I can still do another attachment in here. I'm going to just save my transaction, and it'll open up my document attachment window. So if I did want to attach something else in here, just like a document, it can be Word, it can be Excel, any of those types of things. If I wanted to go in and do another attachment in here, I can go ahead and do attachments at the header level as well. So in sales order processing and in purchase order processing, we have the attachments both at the header, and then all of the line items as well can have their own attachments. One of the things that we can do now that we have everything entered on our sales transaction, we can email this out to our customer. So if you're using the Word templates and the email functionality with Dynamics GP, the document attachments can be emailed as well. There is one option that we just need to select. So if I go to Actions, I can do Select Attachments and send an email. And it gives me all of the attachments that I have. So I have the header attachment, that's the contract, and then I have my line 1 and line 2, my A100, and then my Xbox. So I have a couple of different options here. If I don't want to send any in email, or maybe I just want to send 2 of them, I can do that as well. So both ways will let me do that. And now that I have everything selected, I'm going to go ahead and hit email, and I'm going to open up my email because that's not open, I guess. Let me do that. Let me open up my Outlook here, and I'll send my email and see how the attachments are opened. So when that opens, go ahead and hit email. And just because I had to open up my email and it wasn't open, I have to just enter my password there for the exchange. But it should go through and send my email here, and we'll check that and make sure that comes through here in just a second. So let that email generate. Okay, so my email should have gone through. I'll go through and check that here in just a minute. But before I do that, I just wanted to show you one of the things that is really nice with this document attachment is the different views that we have. So not only can we see it on the item card or the customer record or the vendor record on our transactions, we can also see it in the inquiry windows as well. So if I open up my inquiry window for my item, and I can pull up that A100. So if you have drill backs coming into Dynamics GP for users, they can still see the attachments that are on here. So even though I'm in that item inquiry window, I can go through and hit attach, and then I can see the information that I attached previously in here. So it's very helpful and very useful where anywhere you can view that information. You can view the document information or the master record information. You can also view the attachments that we have in here as well. So very helpful in seeing that type of information. All right, let me see if my email came through. Here's my email. Let me just open that up. Okay, so here's my standard invoice that I get through email coming through as a PDF, and then here's my AFITS contract, and then the laser printer picture that we have as well. So this is the email that would go out to my customer, and then I can automatically include those transactions. In those transactions, I can automatically include the document attachments that we have as well. So very helpful, very easy process to go through and get those attachments out too. Okay, one more thing I want to show you inside of Dynamics GP related to the document attachments. If I go back into my administration, there is a delete attachments file utility under the company. Document attachments are held at the company level, so they're in the company database. So you can turn them on for one company and not another. You can manage them per company when you're going through and setting up the information for your document attachments. So that also means you can go through and clean them up per company as well. And this utility will allow you to delete attachments on or before a certain date. So if you've gone through and cleaned up some things, or you've upgraded and you don't need anything prior to a few years ago, you could clean those up. You can also delete the files attached to notes on or before, and that was that that option that I showed you before for the deleted files for the notes. So if you're in any of the note windows and you do a document attachment and you want to remove any of those, you could. And this may be useful if you have some like master records, you know, customers or vendors, items, any of those types of things that maybe you've had notes on before and you want to clean those up because the master record isn't there anymore. This utility would do that for you as well. So it's just a way to clean up some of that information that we have. Okay. All right, at this point, I'm going to go back into my slides and show you a couple more things and see if there's any questions. I'll go ahead and look at the Q&A pane here for just a minute, see if I can answer any of the questions that have come through. Okay, let me take a look. So first question here is, would the paperclip icon change depending on what checkbox you selected, picture or information? No, the actual icons themselves don't change. It's just whether something is attached or not. And if that's not what your question was, just you can reconfirm. But the actual icons themselves don't change. So it's either the paperclip or the piece of paper with the little paperclip. Those are the only icons that we have. So those don't change, no. And another question is, are we still limited to emailing a blank invoices versus the long, short versions? I'm not sure what that question pertains to. I'll come back to that one. Is this in GP 2013 R2 or new to GP 2015? So everything that I'm showing you today is actually in GP 2013 R2. So if you're on that version, the things that were added in the 2013 R2 were the scanning and the utility for deleting, I believe, are the ones that the information that was added in R2. Yeah, the OLE note migration, payables, transaction attachment, scan and attach. That was all in R2, I believe. So everything else was Service Pack 2 before that. And let's see, another question, is the OLE and document attach apply to all the payroll records as well? Yes. The OLE note and the migration utility does apply to payroll and actually manufacturing as well. So those notes do get migrated as well. That's a good question. What table the blobs are stored in is encrypted data. It does encrypt, or it does show up as an attachment ID. So yes, it's encrypted, and the table is co-items attachment. I actually have a slide on that in just a couple seconds. So I'll give you the tables here in just a few minutes if you hold on for that. Someone's asking about employees and applicant records added to the Doc Attach feature. You know, we welcome all of the feedback. We will prioritize on which ones we add in next. So the MS Connect tool is the best place to put those suggestions because we do use that in order to put new features in. So, but yes, thank you for the feedback as far as where else you would like it. Yes, you can have multiple attachments per record. Okay, a couple more here. Delete attachment file screen. Are the original files being deleted or are the attachments in the SQL database being deleted? I think that's what they're asking is about that setup window that I showed. So when the Doc Attach setup window, the delete after they've been attached, that's deleting them from that location, that shared location that where I was attaching them from. It's not deleting them from the SQL database, no. Let's see, the transactions are set to flow from the master records. Will this flow to transactions that are processed by third-party solutions? I don't know that one off the top of my head. I'll have to take a look at that one. I mean, if they're being entered into a modified window, I believe those still work, but I'll verify that one. GL transactions, can you attach to each journal entry? There isn't an attach at the GL entry window like we see in sales entry or the purchasing entry, but you can use the record or journal entry note, and then there is an attachment in there for the GL if you wanted to use that. Instead of using the old OLE note attachment, you can use the Doc Attach feature that way. And let's see, I think I've got one more here. If the images are stored in the database, would it increase the database to a huge size? It depends on what you're attaching. I don't have any concrete information on as far as database size. I haven't seen any issues with the size, but it will depend on what things you are attaching. So, okay, I'm going to go back over to my slides. I've got a few more that I want to show you. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the OLE Note migration utility, just because this is something that is outside of Dynamics GP as far as the installation. So there is a separate install that you would need to go and find, and the installation is actually on the same place where you would download GP 2013 R2. So there's a separate OLE Note migration utility in the options where all of the service packs and those types of things are listed. So it's on customer source and partner source. You would download that, and then from there you would go ahead and install it. And typically it's installed where GP 2013 R2 is going to be installed. This utility only works with 2013 R2 going forward. So you have to install this at that location. And then what happens is when you run it at least twice. So the first time that you launch the utility, you choose this first option here, extract OLE object files from existing GP installation. And really what that does is it goes out and finds all of the locations for your OLE Notes, based on where like the DexIndy setting is at. And it finds that location and it gathers up all of that information and puts it into a folder. And whether that folder is on your server or your workstation, wherever it's at, that's fine. It's just remember to make sure you have enough room for all of that information, because it's taking all of those attachments that you had as OLE Notes and putting them in one specified location. So then the second time that you run it, you actually run it again and do the import extracted OLE objects files into GP. So then it's doing the document attachment at that point. So it takes everything that was in the OLE containers, puts it into a folder, and then when you run it the second time, it takes everything that's in that folder and does the attachment into Dynamics GP. So you can run it more than the twice. I mean, if you have OLE Notes in different locations, you can run it as many times as you need to, but you'll run it as a minimum twice, one to extract and then one to import into GP itself. So that's kind of the basics for doing that utility. But I just wanted to make you aware that it is out there, and it's available for migrating those OLE Note containers into the document attachment. So it's a slick utility. Okay, so I wanted to just show you at least a few screenshots of how the scanning feature can work. I don't have a scanner hooked up to my laptop today, but I did last night at home. So I just wanted to show you what exactly happens when you're doing the attachment. So if you're on a transaction and you want to scan and attach a document right then and there, so you're entering a payables invoice, you hit the attach icon at the top, our document management window opens up. So that's the window that's behind the device, and then you hit the scan button down at the bottom. You can see it's available. So once the scanner is available, then you can select which device you want to use. So if you did have more than one, you can select which one you want to use. And then with the next screen here, it gives you a couple of options. How do you want to scan it in? Color, black and white. If you want to change some custom settings, if you want to do a preview, you can change a few of those options or decide how you want to do the actual scanning. So that's the second window that would come up. Then it goes through and it acquires the data. And then finally, the last thing it does then is puts that attachment right into your record. So the file scan, 001.jpg, that's the default file name. You can change that if you want to, but this is the information that it does give you for the attachments, scanning them directly into the entry window. So you can do that in any of those master records. You can do that in the transactions as well. So it just can save you a little bit of time. If it's faster to just scan everything into one folder and then go back and do the attachments, you can certainly do that. But if you're entering the invoice and you want to scan it in right away, there is one way to do that as well. Okay, let me see if I have got a couple other questions. Okay, if we want to automate the attachment of OLE Notes based on a file sent from a customer, could we do that? I don't know if there's a great answer to that one at this moment. there's nothing that we have that would automate, attaching those that information, at least out of the box with GP. I can do a little research on that one and see if I can find out if there's something else that we can do for that one. But there's nothing out of GP that would do that automatically, no. Okay, let me see if there's anything else. Okay, I think those are the only two questions. Oh, one more. If docs attached to sales order when transferred from order to invoice, are the attachments visible on the invoice? Yes, they would transfer with the to the invoice. Okay. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of detail about the table structure. Since the document attachments are stored differently than the OLE note information that we're somewhat used to. So the binary blob itself, so the actual picture, the actual document that you've attached, that's in the table called co-attachment items. It's in your company database, but I think there's only 3 columns in that whole table: the binary blob, the file name, and then the attachment ID. So, and it's a bunch of numbers and letters, so it's encrypted out there. So what happens then is the CO tables 101 to 105, that's all of the other document attachment files. So depending on what you're looking at, those are the tables that are used for the items. In the CO 102 table, this table actually contains, they call them business object keys, and basically it's where is the file attached. So whether it's a sales invoice or whether it's the item record or things like that, it's stored in that type of table. It's not in separate columns, so there's a little bit of work that needs to be done. But what I'm going to show you, since we have a little bit of time here, I'm going to show you how one of the things that I did here is I used Excel, and I used Excel 2013, and I used Power Query to pull in some information, and then I combined some data out in Power Pivot and Power Query, and then what that allowed me to do is basically create a Power View report where I could pull out my inventory items, I've got the cost, I've got my item, and then I can pull out the actual picture that I've attached as well. So it gives us, the ability to, if you want to make like a quick catalog of these items, or if you want to do pictures of salespeople or, technicians or something like that, there's quick ways that we can go through and make a report like this through Excel to see that information. There's a few steps that are involved in generating these queries depending on where your data is at and what you want to do. So I'm not going to walk through the entire process separately, but I'll show you the Excel spreadsheet that I've created and explain kind of what I did. And then if there's more detail that is needed, I can do some follow-up later on. But basically what I did is I used this co-attachment items table and then the CO 102, because that's where I had my inventory items, so I knew which items they were attached to. And then I pulled in the item master to get my current cost. And I think the item class description, or the item description I got from there too. So I pulled in a couple of different tables, but I'm going to go into Excel and just show you a little bit of what I did. And like I said, if there's more follow-up that needs to be done on here, I just kind of want to give you an example of what this blob information can do and how you can, use it in different reports and things like that. I'm going to pull up Excel here and share out my desktop again. Okay, so this is the final Power View report, and so this is kind of where the screenshot and where we end. But really what I wanted to show you what I did, I'm going to go back over to Power Query. So I'm using a lot of the Power BI tool set that we have out in Excel. And again, this is Excel 2013 that I'm using this in. The feature that I'm showing you with pulling out the pictures that was recently added, I think this summer sometime, like August is, I want to say, is when this feature was added. So the ability to pull out those pictures into these Power View reports, it was a fairly new feature. So just wanted to show you how we can do something like that. So in Power Query, I'm going to go into my workbook queries. So I've got 4 different queries loaded over here. And really what I did, if I hover over query 3 and I click edit, just going to show you what the power of using Power Query is throughout this information here. So in this one, really for query 3, if I go into my query settings, I can go in and see what I did. If I click on this source, I can see what I did. So here I'm just pulling in my inventory items, and I just pulled in a select class. I just wanted to make this simple so I can pull in a few select items. So in here, I just pulled in my items from my item master, so my 101, and I just pulled in a couple of different items from the same class. So that's where that's kind of the first thing I did is, these are the items that I want to pull out into my report, and that was my query 3 there. So if I go back to the item attachments, you'll see this is the table that actually has the binary blob. So there's 3 columns in here, the attachment ID, the blob, and then the file name. So that doesn't give us a whole lot of information like what record it's on, what transaction it's on, that type of information. So the actual blob is stored in this table, so the actual picture, but we have to figure out where it's at based on some other information. So that's the first thing or the second thing I did is pulled out that information. So query 1 and query 2, what I did here is I used the CO102 table, and I pulled in some information, and then what I was able to do is go through and do some massaging of the data or editing it. And Power Query is really good in allowing you to do that type of thing, because what you can see is over on the right-hand side, applied steps. So these are all of the steps that I went through in order to get the data that I wanted. And really the hardest thing with this one, this is the 102 table, but this business object key 1, 2, and 3, these first 3 columns, these are actually saved as one column in the database. So if you look at the 102 table, that CO102, these 3 columns are actually one. Well, there's ways that you can actually split out the columns by a delimiter. So there's actually a slash that I used, or you can do it by different types of things. But you can see I removed a whole bunch of columns that I didn't need. Then I split that business object key column, and that gives me the reason I did it that way is because that will tell me where things are at, whether it's inventory, payables, sales, and then the business object key is is it on the actual item card, or is it on a transaction record, so I can pull out that information. I had to change the type of column, and then I renamed a couple of things too. So I just fixed it so I could read what these things were. But that's one of the other things that I did. And then in order to get all of my information together, I had to basically combine some tables together. So if I look at, let's look at query 2 first. I did the same thing with this one. Okay. So query 3, let me bring up that one. And I'll show you what I did with this one as well. Okay. This is the one that I combined, I believe. Okay, so my item attachments. This is the one where I basically took query 1 and query 2, and I combined them together into one table or one query. So if I look at my source for this one, this is where I merged the 2 tables. So I selected the attachment ID from my binary blob, that's my co-attachment items table, and then I selected that CO102 table, and that's the one at the bottom, and then I merged them based on that attachment ID. And there may not be matches for everything, so you can see down here I had 10 out of 13, so not everything had an item attached to it. But what Power Query is allowing me to do is, I selected everything from my CO102, that CO attachment items table, and then I merged the 2 together because I needed information from the co-attachments because that's my actual picture, but then the 102 actually had my item number in it. And so I merged it based on the attachment ID, and that's how I got the one record, that's query 3, to use into my Power View report. So I know I'm not explaining all of this in detail. There's if you need more information on this, just let me know and we can get some more information out there for you. But just wanted to show you that there is a way to get this information. If you want to use a view and pull in this information together instead of pulling it through Power Query, that's certainly a viable option as well. If you're good at writing the SQL views to combine that information together, that's certainly another option, and then just pull it into your report here. The one thing that I will say is if you're using the co-attachment items where that binary blob is, you will need to pull it into Power Pivot, and that's basically adding it to a data model, because what that does is then it allows you to go through and it goes through and allows you to get that information into the Power View report. So in Power Pivot, I'm just going to click on this Manage tab here for a minute and show you what that looks like. So I didn't pull in these queries into my actual worksheet inside of Excel. I pulled it into the data model, which is the Power Pivot piece of this. And then down here at the bottom, you can see all 3 queries do show up, and then plus my item attachments, that's the one I combined. So, but this allows me to go in and change this so I can view the picture information, and that's always done in Power Pivot. So if you wanted to pull that out, Power Pivot is where we go through and do that. Okay, so let me just go back to the main page of Excel here. Okay. So back in Excel then, what I did, okay, so in order, there we go. So in order to get the actual Power View report, I just went into Insert and then over in Power View, and then I did a Power View report in here. And when I did that, all 3 of these queries came up, plus my item attachments. That's the one that I combined together. And so all I had to do then is pull out that information into my report. So if I click on my report, it'll show you all the fields that I pulled out. So I just pulled out my item number, my current cost, my item description, and then my actual picture. And I do have the table relationships already defined, but that's where I pulled everything out. So my picture is from that item attachment, and then I have everything else coming from my other table, which is my item master, so I can get my current cost and that type of information from here. So pulling that information out, I mean, you can, in my opinion, I think you could use this to make, like a catalog for some items, or, get a real good picture of the different items that you have, for your warehouse or something like that. There's, lots of different options that we can do, but having the ability to pull that blob out into these different Excel reports, I think can really enhance, some of the document attachment features that we do have. Okay, I'm going to go back to my slides here for just a minute, see if there's any other questions. Okay, let me check here. Can you attach documents to invoice that have already been posted? No, that's a good question. I don't know that one off the top of my head. I will have to check into that one. Do PDFs retrieve from the database as well as JPEGs? Yes, you can attach PDFs. That's perfectly fine. Let's see. When docs are set to flow down, are there multiple copies of the docs? I guess I'm not quite sure what that means, but probably meaning like stored in the database. So is there one attached at the item and then one at the transaction? Yes, then there would be. So if you have the item attached at the record and then it flows down to your transaction, it would be attached in both places. That is correct, yes. Okay. That's all the questions that are in there at the moment. I'll wait just a couple more minutes. That was
Julie,
actually, yes, go ahead, Jason.
Oh, sorry, I did see a couple other questions.
Okay.
Excuse me, I just don't know if you, were you looking primarily in the Q&A block for the questions?
Yes, I was.
Oh, okay. So there was one, and I apologize if you asked this, if you answered this, can contract PDF files be attached to AR and AP accounts?
You can attach at the customer level and then a vendor level. So you can attach at the master record, and then in accounts payable, you can attach for a payables transaction, so a payables transaction entry window. You can do that there, but there's nothing in like receivables entry for an attachment unless you use the notes. I'll share my desktop and show you what I mean there if you have another question.
I'll wait for you to show this, and then there are some other questions coming in.
All right, so in sales, I'll just go in here. So there's no attachment icon at the top of the transaction entry window for sales, but if you use the note over here and then click on the attachment icon here, it is the document attachment management window. So you can put an attachment at the record level for a transaction here. It's just the attachment icon that you see on the top of the ribbon is not going to be there. It's the notes window that has the document attachment for receivables. Go ahead.
All right. So there's a couple other questions that come in. What scanners are supported for document attach functions?
The scanner that it needs to be Windows. Windows Image Acquisition Scanner. So we don't have certain brands or anything like that. It just has to be a Windows Image Acquisition Scanner.
Someone asks, can you attach programs? If so, would it be possible to attach a virus?
I do not believe you can attach a program. I think it's like, JPEG, the, Excel documents, Word documents, PDFs. There is a list of attachments that you can have. I don't have the list off the top of my head, though, but I don't believe you can do a program, no.
There's a question about the flow of attachments from an item master to a transaction. Does that create duplicates of the document in the SQL database at the master and transaction levels?
Yes, it would. So if you have it attached at your item record, there would be an entry in the SQL database for that. And then if you do a transaction, there would be another entry in the SQL database for that one as well.
Okay. Does the email feature work from a workstation connected to the application through RDP?
If you have, it's just like the original email feature that we have with GP. If you have email on that local workstation, then it should work. Yes.
Okay. Is there a way to define doc attachments at the batch level instead of at the document level in sales?
I'm assuming they mean like in receivables batch entry. There is the note icon, so yes, if you want to do an attachment this way and put it down here on that actual note on that batch, you can do it there. We don't have the icon up there, to attach it at the batch itself up here, but next to the note, you can do it that way.
All right. There were a couple other questions about deleting documents.
Okay.
I'm going to try to. I think this one kind of covers it. But if an attachment was deleted, can you undelete it? In other words, moving it from the deleted to the active tab.
No, you can't move it from deleted to active. I mean, you could go back to the active and re-add it, reattach it, but you can't move it per se.
All right. There have been a few people asking about whether they can get access to any of your slides that you've shared today. People were saying they want to share it with either their own customers or with their teams.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how you might be able to, if and how you could handle that?
Yes, I can. Actually, if I do this.
And one option is we can send that out after the session as one option.
Yeah, there's my email address. I just put that up on the screen.
Okay.
So if people want to send me an email if there's something I didn't answer, or if you want a copy of my slides, I will be happy to send them out. Sure.
Great. So there was a follow-up to that question about the batches, and the person who asked the question said, in the sales transaction entry, instead of using actions per document, can we do it at the sales batch window?
Yes, at the sales batch window, they still have that same, note, and then you could do it there. There isn't the attached icon in any of the batch entry windows as far as being up in the ribbon like you see in the entry windows, but you could use the note for that batch ID and do the document attachment there.
All right. I believe we have run through all the questions. If we did miss any, maybe why don't we make a last call? If you haven't had your question answered, we can do a last call. We have about 5 or 6 more minutes before the top of the hour. And there are a couple more coming in here, Jody. So,
yeah, I see a few
okay.
Oh, well, I see. I'll read the ones that I can see, and then you can hit the ones that I don't. Can the docs you attach be multiple pages? Yes, of course they can. Does doc attach include a pointer to the blob, or does it actually attach a copy of the blob? Mike, I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that. Maybe we can follow up with that one offline. That's okay. Is there a utility to mass upload images to item records? No, we don't have a utility to mass upload. It is really a one at a time type thing here. If there's something else that you mass upload to a location, then you could go through and do your document attach that way. But we don't have anything that does a mass upload. No, not at this time.
There's a question here about deleted, another sort of related to deleted files. If the attachment cannot be moved to the active tab from the deleted, and the source was deleted from the location where it was originally stored, are there any other recovery options?
Well, it stays in that deleted because you can still preview it. Not that I know of off the top of my head. I can follow up if you know who that is. I can follow up with that one. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head though, but I can certainly look into it.
There is another question about blobs and the space they take up in the database. I know you've already handled one question on that at least. Do you have any other insight into how people are managing that issue in terms of just storage space?
Unfortunately, no, I don't. I haven't heard of customers running into an issue with space with that. I know that there were some questions about that when we first came out with this feature, but I haven't heard of any customers running into a problem with it. If your customer is, or if you are, that's something that we can certainly bring to our support team and go through and figure out if there's something, if there is an issue with that. But I haven't heard of any customers having that issue as of yet.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. Jody, we seem to be seeing sort of mismatched question lists here, so if you're seeing any others coming in, we could definitely take them. We will get a transcript of all the questions that came in, and we'll review those, and if there's anything else that needs answering, Jody and I will talk about how we can get those answers out to you all. But I think we're at the end of our question queue, so we can start wrapping up. So yeah, first of all, I want to thank everyone for all the great questions and for your attention today. And Jody, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, great. So we'll wrap up the session there. Please do be on the lookout for a survey that will pop up when you leave. We really appreciate that feedback too. And that's it for now. Thanks and have a great day.